Next up, Zach in Jacksonville asked, ideally, what is the ceiling and floor of Ole Miss in 2024? We talk a lot about Ole Miss on this channel. I know that, you know that. We're not going to spend a lot of time dicing through why I love Ole Miss so much, but the ceiling has to be 12-0, right? Like it has to be. That's the ceiling. Do I think it happens? Probably not. They're potentially going to drop a game at some point, but you go back and you listen to the conversation that Lane Kiffin had internally after that Georgia game. When they walked into Athens and they had it 7-7 in the first quarter, and then Georgia smiled and they said, okay, unleash the dogs, and they did. And they ran rampant all over this Ole Miss Rebels defense, and they said, you want more? Okay, we're going to do it more in the second half. And then Ole Miss had uncle, and they said, no, we gave you a break, and you did not want it. You said that you could hang around. So Lane Kiffin goes and says, we got to better our defensive line. We got to better our offensive line if we want to contend with the Alabamas and Georgias of the world. They added 6 offensive linemen this offseason, including a starter in Diego Pounds from North Carolina. They add in arguably the best defensive tackle prospect in Walter Nolan, who was the #1 defensive prospect in his recruiting class in 2022. They get Princely Uwin Manley-Ellen to come on in. JJ Pegas is back. Jared Ivey is back. Not to mention on what you did at the running back position. There's sometimes a world where I live in where I believe quality is better than quantity, especially in journalism. Like, people these days are all about seeing a million pieces of work. Well, if it's all cardboard crap, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to want to read anymore. But there is sometimes where you do need quality when you lose the quality of running back like Quinshon Judkins. And so that's like what Lane Kiffin did. Oh, we got a running back that can work on third down. Cool, we're going to bring him on in. Oh, we got a guy in Henry Parrish that knows our offense and has a relationship with Keith Smith. Okay, bring him on in. Oh, we're going to bring in yet another guy from the SEC and Logan Diggs. Oh, he's hurt. No worries. We'll be fine without him. And so the quantity at running back should make up for the lost numbers that you will have in place of Quinshon Judkins. They bring back a superstar quarterback in Jaxson Dart. He's one of my favorites to go to New York and hoist up the Heisman Trophy. They arguably have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. And I'm already talking before they added in Juice Wells, who was a superstar and squeezing every bit of life out of Spencer Rattler when he was in a breakout year at South Carolina. They also have, I think, a very good secondary. And it's another year working with Pete Golding's system. Their schedule's manageable. They got 2 games at home that you wonder about. Oklahoma, because we don't know what this offense is going to be, and Georgia, where now they get to come to your turf and you get to show them what you want to show them last year. And then you have 1 road game, and it's LSU. And you went down to the wire with LSU last year, and you get the upset win, and it's a big reason why the entire defensive staff got fired in the offseason. Everything else is manageable. So 12-0 should be the ceiling if this offense is as good as it should be. Now, what's the floor? To me, it's 8-4. And even then, I think that's a lost season. I think more so it should be 9-3. I'll give you 8-4 because what happens if Jaxson Dart hurts himself week 1? Knock on wood. Like, just knock right now and call it a day. What happens if the running back room is filled with the quality, but not the quality of player of what Quinshon Judkins was? And now he's tearing it up in Columbus and rushing for 135 yards per game, and you're averaging 65. What happens if you have an injury at the start of training camp, at the start of fall camp, defensively, that really hurts your success? What happens if this team just doesn't mesh well? Because that is a problem with the transfer portal at times. What happens when all these players are brought in, yet they don't see eye to eye? They're not on the same page. They don't coexist well. And then eventually it leads to multiple mistakes, consistent concerns, questions beyond belief. It's a reality. Those are things that can happen. And then you look to a game such as potentially in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's riding high. They feel really confident coming on in, and they just slice and dice you apart. Georgia, you added all these players to go ahead and fix that defensive front. It doesn't really pan out. Then you go ahead and you add in other names to the defensive secondary. Well, they get clipped and clawed and cat sprayed by, who knows? Let's just throw in a random team like maybe an LSU. And that's what happens. So it's hard for me to say that right now when you look at where this roster is, 8-4 isn't the floor. It should be 9-3, but I give it 8-4. The thing that I will say is there's a middle ground where I think 10-2 is what maybe you're expecting. 11-1 is really what the hope is. And if you're 11-1, I did mention that Kirby Moore in the SEC might be mentioned. Glenn Schumann might be mentioned. It would be because what if Lane Kiffin finally gets the offer he can't refuse? Because we all know the ruling that down in Mississippi, It's a state job, so you can only offer a 4-year contract. Yeah, you can raise the money every single offseason if you're Keith Carter, but Billy Napier's fired midseason, and Florida's willing to give you $13 million. And they're willing to go all in. And this is a reason because DJ Lagway is told, hey, we're going to bring in Lane Kiffin to run this offense. And he's like, I'll stick around if you get Lane Kiffin. Well, that might be a job that becomes very desirable. It may also come back down to reality. I also think that when you look at Ole Miss fans, they're no longer accepting the fact that they can just be a playoff team. That was the pipeline dream when they realized Jaxson Dart was coming back, and then Jordan Watkins was coming back, and Caden Prieskorn was coming back. Well, then you add in all this talent this offseason, and you don't really lose a lot, and you see the identity of this team take a new step forward, and you know that this is considered to be such a high-profile roster. Like, the hype around them is so large. It's like almost seeing a giraffe on the very tip top of Mount Kilimanjaro. That's how sky high it is. So I think that now expectations have changed because of it. It's no longer just winning a game in the postseason. It's now winning multiple games in the postseason, getting to the college football playoff, going to the semifinals, because you have a roster that is good enough to do that. But ceiling floor should be 12-0 easily, national championship potential bound, SEC championship without question, and then 8-4 probably be in the floor. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. That's awesome. Thank you so much. But before you leave, make sure that you hit subscribe. And if you want to check out any of our other great work, make sure you click on one of the videos here. Am I pointing at the right spot? I'm not entirely sure. I'm really not.